creation of her. Over the course of a year, this lesson was learned. In essence, my 8-year marriage has failed, or is failing. We got married around 10 years ago, and my wife, Danielle, I'm not sure whether I can use her real name, and I knew immediately that we were meant to be. This concealed a darker aspect, which was a highly unstable and turbulent relationship. I'll be honest, right now, I struggle with controlling my emotions, and Danielle can be extremely confrontational and belligerent. Thus, explosiveness. The final half of the previous year was when things really started to go wrong for us. 8 months had passed since we'd moved to a new home to try and improve the quality of our marriage. Despite the fact that I am the main provider, Danielle took a 2-year hiatus from her career. Danielle and I both become incredibly lazy. The contrary is always true. Assumed control of the union and, in a sense, turned into the husband. Execute the task independently. Shopping, kids runs, cooking, cleaning, gardening, etc. Let's go back to February 15th. She just says, I can't do this anymore. It's finished. We must part ways. Because of the state of the marriage at that time, one should not be startled. I honestly agreed with her that this would be a workable option and assumed it would just take a few weeks. A few days later, I moved out to live with my parents, and we made an arrangement for me to visit them on Fridays through Sundays to help with the kids' care and spend time with them. She had more time to see her parents, go out with her friends, and not have to do all the things she'd been doing, which she described as slowly disappearing, while you idle away the time. Here's where I started acting foolishly and ignorantly. She would frequently tell me, I'm going to stay with my sister, or me and my girlfriends are going out tonight. I won't be back until tomorrow, when I would drop by. It goes like this for 7 weeks. On Saturday night, April 6th, I was browsing Facebook when I noticed some pictures that a friend had posted from a party that took place in late February on their shared page. The one picture I see of Danielle makes me double take. All dolled up and really attractive, along with a rugged-looking man wearing a suit. I've met this person before. We had a meeting in late December of last year when he came to our house to conduct a survey. I don't mean to imply anything, but you should be aware that my heart was racing so quickly that I could feel my chest and stomach getting uneasy. I call her and say, you have to go home. We need to talk. She now shows up 15 minutes later, and I'm at odds with her. Darren, what's the deal with you and this guy? I won't go into the specifics of our talk, but she acknowledged that she had been seeing him ever since our breakup, 5 days after I moved out, to be exact, and she justified it by saying that, since we are now legally divorced, it doesn't matter if it was our first date. She claims that she will not be stopping to see him because he is a great guy who makes her feel good and want something she has been missing for years, and because he is as into her as she is into him. We are dead as a pair, she says, but we still have to stand by our children. I apologize for the digression, but recalling this now is triggering memories. But we haven't been together since. I can only spend weekends with my kids when I return home. Be that as it may, I've consented to this, which enables her to go to her boyfriend's residence. Nothing that can be done about this. However, it destroyed me. I felt there was no way in hell when I first saw this guy. With my wife, he's punching above his weight. It seems like I'm in a foreign territory. I must admit that I'm completely paralyzed by this issue. I'm not sure if this is an affair, infidelity, or cheating because we are separated. All I know is that they met before he came to our house in early December at a school Christmas party. I still love my wife and think she's going through a midlife crisis. So, should I let this all blow over, file for divorce, or move back to our home? It's tearing me up right now. Has a son, 1 year older than my own eldest, and is divorced. I'm almost positive that she hadn't spoken to him face to face before then. On the day he visited, I was at home, and I never witnessed any too friendly or flirtatious behavior between them. I'm fairly certain that he left his business card with us that day, and she has hinted at enough over the months to suggest that she thought he was someone she could talk to and possibly even knew her. Complained about my treatment of her and the status of our marriage. Yes, it has been quite bad over the past few months and years, and he recognized that as his chance. Anyone familiar with the White Knight syndrome? I became fixated on the other man. Darren is his name. Once more, I'm not sure if I can legally identify him. I made an effort to learn every detail about him. According to Danielle, he was in the army from the mid-1990s until he left to enter the building trade after becoming a citizen. He's 44, divorced, has a son, and lives 5 minutes away by car from us. I also know that he has a reputation, which may or may not be significant. If you can read between the lines, that's better than me going into detail. I'm not sure if this won my wife over. I've had all the conversations with her that I needed to. Really a bad move. She has also attested to the veracity of the reputation, but when I confront her about it, she becomes irate and says, it's not just about that. The only individuals who are aware of our predicament are her mother, her 2 sisters, her parents, her unidentified pals, and possibly 4 other friends as well as a few coworkers. Now that it's been going on for 6 months, there are moments when I feel hopeful that things between them are not all that great. Sometimes on the weekends, she will choose not to see the other man and instead spend time at home with our children and me. One thing that really irritates her is that he no longer texts or calls her frequently. She went crazy after texting him 12 times in a row without receiving a response. 3. On a few occasions lately, she has returned home early, either in the afternoon or at lunchtime. It's Friday after you stay, appearing sullen and moody as if his only interest were watching cheesy action movies and ordering takeaway. 4. She attempted to break up with him back in June. Comments: divorce is the death of a marriage, particularly in the absence of regulations, limitations, etc. According to your wife, the goal of the separation is to be free of the marital restrictions. 1. Return home. 2. Seek legal counsel. 3. Make them visible. 4. Organize your money. 5. Perform the 180. 6. She doesn't regard you at all. Presently, you must begin playing this as soon as the M is done. Avoid begging. Avoid pleading. Actually, give up requesting anything from her. OP answers back: I get along really well with Danielle now, so nobody tries to finish the other. We have lengthy conversations in which we talk about what we could have done and what we can do. This past weekend was one of those conversations. She was in our marital home weekend with the kids and myself, not at Darren's. And she said, I often think that when came along, we should have split up years ago. We were fighting like cats and dogs. To be quite honest, I didn't disagree with her. Rather, I just felt like I was at fault. I really said to her, what the hell have I been doing? I lost both my wife and my kids. Opus, actions not words, she added. For me, the first 2 months were absolute torture. They are for everyone else going through this, I'm sure. During this time, I was unable to even consider competing for Danielle or gaining her back. She's with another man now, I thought. She has made up her mind. What I'm not giving her, he is not able to. What's the purpose? I don't really feel bad for the OM after 7 months because he's single. My wife is a pretty woman. Taking her advice, he took a chance. Hated him intensely at first. Became fixated on him, but not anymore. I wouldn't call him another man's piece of junk. But I believe that Danielle is aware, deep down, that all they own is doomed. They look at one another. How come? There have been 2 or 3 setters in a row with no indication that it is getting worse. She claims that his friends have told him, you got lucky with that one. You really got a good catch with that married bird. However, I don't think he could handle her, our 2 children, and his son. She's a monkey, as everyone has said, never letting grip of a vine before another is within reach. She is for bonding and me for family matters. 1. I suppose I've come to terms with the fact that, should we separate ways, he might be a decent companion for my wife. She doesn't understand the arguments or bother him. He looks after his son, who is his own. I would be a lot less understanding if he was just a single man with no obligations or baggage. 2. I haven't verified, however I know of someone who received their decree absolute in less than a year. 3. All I'm doing is looking at myself in the mirror. Though I wasn't a good husband, I was a decent father. 4. I'm 6 feet tall and 180 pounds currently. Lost 30 pounds as a result of stress, fear and anxiety. Whole head of hair. I don't appear 44 years old. The thing is, I used to get along really well with ladies. I believe that, for whatever reason, my ability to handle the tension in my marriage to Danielle has diminished. To be sure, I no longer feel comfortable with ladies. Yes, you are placing bets on married ladies based on the Christmas idea. I'm curious, but I'm not sold. However, just to be clear, considering his physical attributes, is the same age as myself. Seems to be every year of his life now. 5. There is nothing more that I can think of. It's 5 o'clock now. She invited me over for supper, and it's time we talked about moving things along, so I'm heading over to our married residence in about an hour. Last night was a long one. Went to bed at 3 in the morning. After figuring out what needed to be done, Danielle and I have jointly decided to get a divorce. I went over, she made dinner, our 2 boys played with her, and then we opened a bottle of wine and just talked and talked. Everything was incredibly friendly. She listed the issues that she believed led to her breaking up with me and seeing another man. In the end, though, I realized that it actually has nothing to do with other men. For a longer period than either of us wanted to acknowledge, our marriage was poisonous. She thought that, at most, 2 years ago, she had ceased loving me as a guy. She felt that she had been caring for 3 children ever since the birth of our youngest, which was a year ago. I thought that this shouldn't have continued any further back and couldn't really dispute with anything she said. It was clear that years ago, that the marriage was failing. We got into some really terrible fights. And because it's cowardly, I will put up my hand and acknowledge that I was violent toward Danielle. And to be blunt, one of my buddies said it. It's over, man, once you beat a woman, especially your wife. I feel terrible about this, like I'm guilty and humiliated. She says I have the other man wrong when I ask her about his intentions. He wanted to take her away from me, which is why he didn't pursue her. She acknowledges that he turned her head, most likely 2 weeks after they first met, which would have been the previous week in November of last year. She claimed to have experienced a flash of intense fear that, should she choose to remain with me, we would wind up in a mental institution where we would eventually commit suicide. Despite the fact that he is not particularly attractive, she says she genuinely liked him after their first meeting. The desire increased when she later learned about the reputation of the other man. I guess that's what I needed to hear because she was brutally honest with me. She tells me he was truly concerned about my well-being and steady decline into depression, so he didn't want to push things even though he wants more from her than simply a once-a-week duck buddy. I said well, even though I wasn't sure how to feel about it. We'll see how long he sticks around once our divorce is finalized. She had cried a few times when we had discussed me and the things that had gradually happened to me over the years. D, how are you doing, Opus? What happened to the cool, edgy guy at work that I fell completely in love with? Since then, it seems like you've become more and more distant from Outlive, the kids, and me. I was exhausted from being married to you. D, you know, there have been a few times since I met Darren that I have fervently wanted you to stand up for me. Strike out to save our union. Take action. D, recall. I was additionally offended by this because I was aware of the events she was referring to. She was getting ready to go out with O back in March when I happened to be at our house. I told her how beautiful she looked, and seeing her in this state still broke my heart. Why are you allowing me to enter another man's arms? She questioned me. I can only recall staring at the ground in despair and being unable to say anything other than have a nice night. She broke down in tears once more over this pitiful situation. D, you were genuinely blind. You may say that was a sign. Oh, I was pushing you. For the love of a duck, P has to grow up and man up. The only thing my pitiful defense can give is that it took me 7 weeks to learn about other man following the day we broke up. I adopted the attitude that, well, she's moved on, we broke up, she met someone else, and she's gone. In the week and month that followed, I crumbled. I started to get fixated on her and other men. I developed a fixation on the other man. Motion pictures that never stop. All I could do was muster the last of my strength to support my children. Regretfully, Danielle went to the other man's house, and I had to go to our marital home. In the same way as I accepted it was over, I accepted that. She's got another person. In battle and love, all is fair. Last night, I questioned Danielle about why she hadn't just told me that she had met someone. She said that she didn't want to put me through any more stress than she knew it would, considering my erratic and delicate emotional and mental state. And after I mentioned in another thread that I was going to approach other males, Danielle pointed out that it would not go well if I did so. She is all too familiar with me. First of all, we both agree that the marriage was really deteriorating a long time ago. The fissures started to show after our first child was born. Since number 2 arrived, we really ought to have called in a day, but it seems like we were just covering up the cracks as early as a few years ago. Things have not been good. It was a terrible last 8 months of last year. During our supper the other night, I really said to Danielle, I'm surprised you didn't leave me years ago. 2, I have a lot of responsibility for not intervening sooner to stop her, but as I already mentioned, when I learned about her and OM, I became numb from it. I never imagined that such mental suffering could become so bodily. I wouldn't have much hope of getting her back because I was attempting to maintain my composure in whichever way. 3, Darren, while I'm sure he doesn't care about me at all, he knew I was struggling with what had happened, and it shows on the weekends when I've gone out with Danielle and the boys and he hasn't lost interest in me. If I may offer you another example, Danielle almost made a U-turn when she said, I'm not sure this is a good idea, I'll have to clear it with Darren. We had gone away for 3 days around Easter. In other words, Danielle and Darren now perceive themselves as a couple in a romantic relationship. I do agree with you, though, because at first he was acting shady and told her he didn't want anything tangible from my wife. However, I'm sure he put that pressure on her back in December, because she has, in fact, acted physically against me several times. Nothing big, just your average girl stuff. Looking back now, when we first parted ways, it was one of those friendships that developed into a sexual relationship, but she constantly told me I had to get over the feeling that he was trying to take my wife away. The fact that I felt incapable of competing for my wife or winning her back, either physically or emotionally, made things worse for me. I didn't want to degrade myself by even trying because I felt like she had moved on and was no longer there. Looking back on this time, she says she felt so abandoned and let down that I didn't want her back or even try to defend her. It's a challenging one. Both of us have moved on, and our divorce is proceeding smoothly except from a few minor financial difficulties, of course. Every weekend when I pick up the kids, I still see her, but she is no longer with her first OM. A few months later, she hasn't seen anyone. We are about a month away from divorce. I reside in my own apartment, but she continues to live in our marriage home with our 2 children. A lovely BMW. I work with a 37-year-old accountant who is red-headed, tattooed, and pierced. We are currently dating. In 2 months, I'll be traveling to July for 3 weeks with some friends to watch the World Cup. Even though I placed my wife Danielle on a pedestal, I still adore her a great deal. And every time I think about her, I still cry. Not because of what she did, but rather due to her moral character in general. Then our happy experiences and those memories suddenly return to us. We now get along much better. I make the 8 a.m. call home after driving to work every morning. I give the kids a humorous, lighthearted daily weather and news update while she allows me to speak to them on the loudspeaker. It's one of those instances where you just can't live with someone. Despite seeing my STBX once a week, I still miss her. I realize now that what I did was incorrect. She struck me as a trophy wife. She was one of those women who makes men think they have no chance with her when we first meet. Liam fully recognized and addressed the error I made in treating her more like a wife than a mother and as a woman. I now get it. I haven't really manged up or become an alpha, to be honest. I am now aware of my identity on an emotional, mental, and physical level. I spent some time comparing myself to my wife's other men, but I'm not like them. I don't have to be, I am capable of being myself. Both monetarily and health-wise, I'm good. I visit the fitness center. Even though I'm getting older and getting hit isn't very smart, I still enjoy boxing. I play golf now that the weather is nicer. I ride my bike. I operate a vehicle. Although I enjoy spending most weekends cooking for myself, watching movies, and having a few drinks at home, I am well aware that one might become overly accustomed to living in one's own bubble. A few of my female friends are prepared to enter into a relationship with me, but for now, we are just friends. She started seeing number 1 practically immediately after she broke up with me. Naturally, I was devastated. Then I reached the accepting phase. In fact, I began to feel that perhaps she should have gotten a guy like this. I broke down one night when I went over, maybe in November of last year, while we sat drinking and talked. I also recall telling her, I lost my family and my wife, and it's my fault. The saying a happy woman's wife doesn't cheat is one I've heard a lot. And in this instance, I can relate to that. Danielle and I dated for 8 years, during which time I put her on a pedestal. Peaks and valleys. However, things are becoming easier and easier these days, and if it weren't for our 2 children, she would simply be a person I used to know. Sadness so deep it hurts. Going out and having fun with friends is the first step outside of a relationship, in my opinion. Additionally, you cannot act like a star toward your spouse, otherwise, they will view you as a fan. Story 2. I discovered that my spouse of 9 years had an affair on October 25th. He acknowledged having affections for her in some text exchanges I found a few months before I caught him, but nothing more. I sensed that there was something he wasn't telling me. Naturally, he responded no when I repeatedly asked him whether anything had happened. On October 25th, I searched through his phone and discovered a message she had saved that showed her bare bones. When I pressed him about it, he eventually acknowledged that they had shared a bed once. I don't know if it happened more than once. I suppose it makes no difference how many times it occurs. I am aware that things weren't always roses and rainbows in our marriage, but I didn't anticipate it. I was unaware of how many issues we were facing. Although I can now identify areas where we didn't click, it still doesn't excuse him from seeing someone else. He ought to have spoken with me. We're trying to improve our marriage. There are good days and awful days. It's not a good day. He doesn't seem to be attempting to win me back. I think I'm putting in more effort than he is on this. We are reading his needs, her needs together every night and discussing our thoughts afterward. I went and bought the book. There appears to be some benefit. I suppose all I need is some motivation. I need to be assured that staying does not make me a fool. Aside from my children, my spouse is the one person I love the most, and I want to forgive him. Above everything, I want to give him my forgiveness. There are days when I feel like I've forgiven him, and then there are days like today when I'm just so mad. He has our families back in this, and that makes me so upset. We have 2 small kids, and I feel like he did this to them too, in addition to me. I confided in him last night, and he knows that I need more time with him. We seem to be moving forward, in my opinion, but sometimes you just mistrust everything. I told myself that today would be wonderful, and so far, it has been. I'm attempting to ignore anything negative, and so far it appears to be working. My age group told me that they thought our spark had died. He declared his love for me and other things. Is this anything that can be saved? How can we reignite that fire? I find myself wondering about their relationship on a weekly basis. I can't help but wonder if she did this or that with everything I do. Not sure whether I even want to find out. I understand now that it was a product of what was missing from our marriage. Therefore, it's actually not even about her. I notice that sometimes I have pretty wonderful days followed by a complete meltdown. Though I'm aware that everything is normal, how can I stop seeing these images in my head? I make an effort to mentally repeat, he chose to stay with me. However, I now believe that I shouldn't have had an option. We're making an effort to go forward, but I feel like I'm stuck with these ideas running through my head all the time. I am incredibly frustrated, mostly with myself. When I spoke with the H last night, he informed me that his feelings for me had changed. Here's where it becomes complicated for me, though. He declares his love for me and claims that he gets envious and ill to his stomach when he sees me with another man or in a relationship. I'm at a loss for what to do now, but he wants to sort everything out. He claims that without me, he cannot imagine his life. He seemed to be contradicting himself. I believe I have done everything in my power to express my love for him. I believe he thinks, that was nice, when he looks at such items. However, that's all. It doesn't seem to elicit any other feelings. I want our family to stay together and I adore my H, but how much longer will I abuse myself like this? It appears as though he lacks the will to see this through. For instance, at the end of March, we discussed going to Panama City to attend a volleyball match and spending the entire weekend there by ourselves. which, since having children 5 years ago, we have not done. I inquired if he was still planning to travel. I believe we should go. He simply shrugs and replies, sure. You can tell, even in that high-pitched voice, that they are just saying what you want to hear. Just to be clear, I am not blind, nor am I foolish. When he is unwilling to do something, I can tell. I don't understand, though, why you know that we need to spend some time together. A month later, he hesitates only for us. We have made the decision to work on our marriage since we still love each other. He has basically informed me that he is not happy and that he loves me, but not that much. He feels as though he is living a lie, and I feel as though I have been improving myself for the two of us by reading 4 books and engaging in online reading. He does nothing, but I'm doing everything I know to help. I don't mean anything. He merely observes while he is aware that I am doing these things. When I brought this up to him the other night, he informed me he wasn't motivated to work on us. On Tuesday, we have our first counseling session. I think the battle is going against me. I'm beginning to believe that there may be no hope left. I informed him that I couldn't stand up for us alone. I can't be the only one working nonstop while he watches from the sidelines. How can I inspire him to work harder? It's just beyond me. I feel depressed all the time right now, and that's not my personality or who I am. I normally have a cheerful disposition, always grinning and laughing. I feel like I'm barely surviving these days. We have 2 small children, ages 4 and 5, so it's challenging. I nearly want to take a little vacation from here to show him that he won't be content on his own. The issue is that I'm stuck here. My relatives are 16 hours distant. Other than that, my parents are unaware. Just my sibling. My dad would despise him if he learned, provided that we remain together. That's not something I want to handle. If I really have to, I'll tell them. I occasionally check his phones. I can't live like that if I check them every day because I get fascinated. Yes, I think he's finished it. He just leaves for work and returns home. Right now, there are no outside activities without me. We began counseling last week, and after our first hour of session, our therapist informed us that we were emotionally distant from one another. I concur. It is difficult for me to emotionally relate to someone I have complete faith in, who deceived and turned on me. I genuinely am trying, but at what point is enough? Should I simply work on it until he decides what to do? Do I even give him the option to choose that? My life would be unimaginable without our family. I just cannot fathom not being old with him. I'm just not sure if he shares my thoughts. Told him to go 2 months later. Today, my H moved out. He received and I had no idea he was unhappy. Neither did he or P. He never attempted to address it or speak with me about it. He never seems to be joyful, thus I'm very sure he suffers from depression. Not only us, but nearly everything. There is never enough of anything. I could take no more of the roller coaster. I would be thinking that today is going well for us. He wasn't. I advised him to leave till he came to his senses. It hurts harder to have him here than it does to have him gone, but not truly present. Our children, ages 4 and 5, are not aware yet. What should I say, exactly? How should I break the news to them? They constantly ask to see him. I am so very sorry for them. I don't understand, and neither do they. After the breakup, we had a brief conversation 6 months later. In retrospect, he never explained to me why he wasn't happy. He recently admitted to me that his love for me isn't what a husband should. I mean, I adore you, but not romantically. In any case, we resolved to improve our bond. All I had to do was do the work. He took no action. I asked him to show me an example of what he did to get us to work, and he says he did. Him and myself without the children. He could think of nothing. He told me he was trying to make things work just by being here. So, it's Father's Day the day after. It was an amazing day. He says he's not feeling well. I take the kids and spend the remainder of the summer with my family who live more than 1,000 miles away. I reason that if I go, he will eventually experience life without his family and will be forced to consider us. And we built our family. It did not work out. I learned that during our vacation, he made touch with another woman. We return home in time for the kids to begin school. So, as of right now, he is undecided. He's at a loss on what to do. He fears that if he tries something with me and it doesn't work out, he will be making the worst mistake of his life. I'm more than eager to work things out, but I've come to the conclusion that if he isn't, then no matter what I do, it won't work and he won't be really devoted to the relationship. I am aware that our union will not be the same. However, I genuinely think it can improve upon what it already is. We're able to be content. He is completely engrossed in his feelings for another woman. At last, I realize what needs to be done. I made a vow that while I don't want a divorce, I wouldn't be the one to file for one. But I'm at a loss for what he can do to me anymore. I find it difficult to understand him as I'm not sure if he wants to maintain our family unit. How are you unaware of that? Thus, I made a call to a lawyer this morning, and we are scheduled to meet in approximately a week. I have no notion what to ask for, what to anticipate, or what else. I'm terrified, depressed, and heartbroken. Even though I know I'll be all right, I'm still afraid. Despite everything he has done and experienced, I still love him. I cherish him. A few days later, I gave my WH 2 weeks to locate housing because I find it really difficult to have him here. The only thing we've mentioned to the 5 and 6-year-old children is that their parents need some time apart. I want him to tell them, but we will tell them together, of course. It is he who desires to D. By doing so, he is essentially abandoning his family in favor of the other woman. We're probably going to notify him a few days before he departs. In essence, I'm waging a losing war to keep our marriage intact, and I'm anxious and afraid. He declines to accept MC. I don't think he understands what he is doing because his head is so far up his back. My comment: you are not worth the work, he's gone. Find a person who believes you are valuable. I'll be uploading much more frequently this week after taking a little vacation this past weekend.